On the 22nd of March 1978, veteran tightrope walker Karl Wallenda stepped out onto a wire stretched between two wings of the Condado Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Below him was a 10-story drop straight down onto a paved road. Many times throughout his career, Karl Wallenda had proudly performed without a safety net. This time was no exception. And this time, to the shock and horror of everyone watching, would be the last stunt that one of the world's most famous high-wire artists would ever attempt. Karl Wallenda was born on the 21st of January 1905 into a family with a long history of performance. The Wallendas had been travelling Europe since the 1700s, setting up in towns and villages to entertain the population, and subsisting largely on donations given by the audience in return for their often death-defying performances. By the time Karl turned 6, he was already performing acts of balance and daring in shows for the general public. By the time he turned 11, he was performing in beer halls in Germany, with an act that involved stacking several chairs in an unstable-looking tower, and then performing a handstand on the very top chair. His interest in tightrope walking began when he was still a teenager. He saw an advert in a local paper seeking an experienced hand balancer with courage, and wasted no time in applying. The job was a demanding one. He was to accompany an experienced wire walker out onto a wire, and then perform a handstand while balanced on the man's feet. For Karl Wallenda, however, such a stunt was well within his grasp. With the skills learned from this job, Karl soon began to develop an act of his own. He worked with other performers, including his brother Hermann and a woman named Helen Kreis, who he would later go on to marry. The act he developed took wire walking to a new level. It featured Helen, balanced on a chair, which in turn balanced on a bar, which rested on the shoulders of two men on bicycles, all of which was balanced precariously on a single wire. By 1928, the act was polished and ready to be shown to the general public. The Great Wallendas, as they were then known, performed their stunt in Madison Square Gardens and received a rapturous round of applause. Soon, they started touring with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, one of the highest-profile touring circus companies of the 1900s. With the backing of the Ringling Brothers, the Wallendas went from strength to strength. They entertained crowds of thousands with feats that seemed utterly impossible. But even during this time of great prosperity, their work was by no means easy. In the 1930s, Karl's brother, Willy Wallenda, performing separately from the rest of the family, fell while riding a bicycle along a high wire. There was a safety net in place at the time, and Willy fell directly into it, only to bounce back out again and fall to the ground below. He did not survive. His death, a deep shock to Karl, may have contributed to a lifelong distrust of nets and safety harnesses, equipment which he sometimes suggested could make performers complacent. It wouldn't be long, however, before Karl himself would endure a serious fall. In the 1940s, during a performance in Akron, Ohio, an unexpected movement in the wire caused the entire pyramid of 4 performers, including Karl and his wife Helen, to fall. But all 4 managed to catch themselves on the wire before tumbling to the ground below. The whole incident was witnessed by a reporter, who later wrote that they had fallen with such grace that it seemed as if they were flying. Following this review, the Great Wallendas became known by a new name, the Flying Wallendas. Later that decade, on the 6th of July 1944, at a performance in Hartford, Connecticut, a fire broke out in the stands of a crowded circus tent. 5 members of the Flying Wallendas, Karl included, were seconds away from stepping out onto the wire when they spotted the flames. They quickly slid down ropes near the center of the ring and escaped without serious injury, before returning to help with the rescue effort. The circus tent they had fled from burned to the ground, costing more than 160 people their lives. It later emerged that gasoline had been used to waterproof the canvas circus tent, something which caused the fire to spread astonishingly quickly. The flying Wallendas had, in this case, had a very lucky escape. They were not so lucky, however, on the 30th of January 1962. By this time, Karl had developed the act still further. The Wallendas would now regularly show off a high-wire human pyramid of 7 people, balanced in 3 tiers. During a performance in front of 7,000 people at the Shrine Circus in Detroit, however, this incredible structure wavered and collapsed. 2 of the performers, 23-year-old Dieter Schepp and 29-year-old Dick Fonen, fell to the ground and died. Another, Karl's own son, Mario, fell and was paralyzed for the rest of his life. Karl caught the wire as he fell and thus survived. He returned to perform again the very next day, saying, "I can handle the grief better from up there. The wire is my life." And indeed, wire walking was a huge part of Karl's life. He continued to perform for many years after the fall in Detroit, even past a time when others might have retired. The 7-person, 3-tier pyramid was removed from normal shows, but Karl made a point of carrying off the trick at least 2 more times to prove that it was still possible, and that he and his fellow performers were undaunted by the fall. Karl also engaged in solo wire walks. As time went on and wire walking developed as an art form, these became bigger and more spectacular. He would walk across wires suspended over stadiums and between high-rise buildings, never showing even a moment of fear or uncertainty. In 1970, at the age of 65, he undertook a walk across Tallulah Falls Gorge in Georgia, a stunt planned by the leaders of Tallulah Falls to raise the profile of the town. It was one of his longest wire walks to date, 300 meters or 1,000 feet in length, with a yawning drop of 229 meters or 750 feet should anything go wrong. But nothing did go wrong. Karl performed the walk effortlessly, even adding 2 handstands along the way, one to honor American soldiers fighting in the Vietnam War, and another simply to demonstrate that he could. At the far end, his wife Helen was waiting for him with a martini, and nearly 30,000 spectators who had turned out to watch the death-defying act. By the time he entered his 70s, Karl Wallenda had lived a full and incredible life, one which had involved both tragedy and triumph. On the 22nd of March 1978, Karl agreed to perform a wire walk at the Condado Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The circus, featuring many of the Wallenda family, was in town, but ticket sales were lower than normal. Karl believed that a televised wire walk would be a good way to drum up interest and increase custom. The weather that day was clear but with a strong breeze. As Karl stepped out onto a wire suspended between the 2 wings of the hotel, hundreds of people watched from ground level, and multiple television cameras followed his every move. Holding a weighted pole for balance, Karl walked slowly out above the void. Initially, all appeared well, but as he approached the middle of the wire, Karl appeared to momentarily lose his balance. For several seconds he wobbled in place before bending forward slightly, as if planning to reach for the wire. He did not grab the wire. Instead, to the horror of the crowd, he slipped and fell 37 meters or 121 feet to the road below. Although medical help was on the scene within moments, he did not survive. In the aftermath of the fall, all possible causes were considered. The wire was inspected and it was found that at least 2 guy lines, extra lines used to support and secure the main wire, had been installed incorrectly. This, combined with unusually strong winds, had been enough to unbalance even a high-wire walker as experienced as Karl Wallenda. Karl Wallenda was a legend within the world of circus performance, and he left behind a considerable legacy. His children and grandchildren continued to perform and develop new acts, and the Flying Wallendas remain a respected circus group to this day. They still perform the majority of their high-wire stunts without a net or a safety harness. In 2011, Karl's great-grandson, Nick Wallenda, returned to San Juan to complete the walk that had marked the end of Karl's life. Nick went on to carry out many other incredible feats, including a wire walk over Times Square in New York and a high wire walk with his sister, Liana Wallenda, across a gorge in the Grand Canyon National Park. Karl Wallenda is remembered now for the many incredible things he did during his lifetime, for acts of balance and skill that he undertook while knowing all too well how dangerous and costly they could be if something should go wrong. His fearlessness and skill inspired a generation of circus performers, many of whom, even today, take great risks to be able to do, seemingly, the impossible.